I'm Hannah.
And I'm Georgia.
And you're listening to Film Picnic.
We begin as always by acknowledging that Film Picnic is recorded on the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. This land was not given up freely, which is why we refer to it as unceded territory, and it continues to be home for the indigenous communities from which it was stolen.
Yes, it is with immense privilege that we talk into these microphones and share our stories, as stories have been shared for generations before us on this land. We hope that Film Picnic can be a space for shared accountability, knowledge sharing, and reconciliation. This always was and always will be Indigenous land.
Beautiful. We are thrilled to welcome a special guest.
Two special guests,
yes, truly, who really helped make Film Picnic possible as a directed studies initiative here at UBC. A professor of film and professor of film at UBC. He holds a PhD in philosophy from the University of Oxford and has taught at various institutions like NYU Abu Dhabi, St. Andrews, and Roehampton, London. A distinguished scholar and filmmaker, his work spans fiction, documentary, video essays, with films recognized by Sight and Sound magazine and critics like Jonathan Rosenbaum. His research explores film philosophy, digital media, posthumanism, and critical race theory, with his latest book, Navigating from the White Anthropocene to the Black Chthulucene.
Is that how we pronounce it?
We'll find out how to pronounce it. Adding to an extensive body of work. A sought-after speaker, he is presented at the British Film Institute, VIFF, and universities worldwide. Please welcome Dr. William Brown.
I'm completely honoured. Thank you. And honoured to be here on your show, and in the spirit of your amazing land acknowledgement also, to be here in Vancouver, in BC, in Canada more generally. Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me. I feel completely, that was a very flattering intro, but I feel completely unworthy, and so.
Well, that's simply not true.
We're all at the picnic here. It's okay.
Is it Chthulucene? I should know this.
I think generally I would say Chthulucene, but there is a CH, so ch. It works for me, Cthulhu.
Maybe that's my Americanism peeking through there.
We also have Trouble in the studio with us today.
Trouble is here.
That's right.
Beautiful.
And this is a very academic gag to make, but one of the key theorists of the Chthulucene, Chthulucene, is a scholar from actually teaches it, or historically taught at Santa Cruz, actually, called Donna Haraway, and the book in which she articulates the Chthulucene as an idea is called Staying with the Trouble.
I love that.
Wow.
I love that.
Convergence.
What a beautiful way to begin.
Yeah.
Wow, the vibes are so relaxed.
I know. I knew that would happen. I feel like your voice
day.
is always so soft and relaxing. I knew that as soon as we had Will in here, it would be chill vibes.
Yeah. I'm going to start on a not academic note, but just something chaotic that I wanted to bring up. Has anyone ever told you that you bear a resemblance to John Waters?
Actually, yes, but only in the last year or so. So, and actually I can name, so there is an actress who won an Oscar for her role as a supporting performer in a film called The Fighter, called Melissa Leo. And she last summer in Portugal at the Film Festival said that I looked like John Waters. That was the first time that I'd heard that. I generally get Steve Buscemi. And I was telling Georgia that I got Steve Buscemi this week in my class. So two lookalikes in 2 days, actually.
Wow. That's sorry. Well, I mean it only as a compliment, but
John, both. I mean, in their own way, both pretty cool.
Georgia and I both, in different years, attended a Go Global program with UBC, which was run by Will and his wife Mila, who we had on as was Mila our first guest? I think she was our first.
She was our first.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes. Episode 2 was our first.
So we attend Fest Film Festival, which is a new directors film festival in Espinho, Portugal. We had the privilege of going on 2 separate years, but is the festival 12 days or is the experience that we have 12 days?
The festival's only a week. It probably feels like 12 days.
I don't know where the number 12 came from, but that was.
It's a day longer this year than usual. So, but normally it's about a week.
And are you going this summer again?
We are.
Wow. Yeah. How many students are you bringing this time?
Final number TBC, but it's at least 50.
Wow.
So yeah.
A biggin.
Yeah.
Was it about 30 the first
It was 27 in the first year.
Wow.
It
That was my year.
47 in the second year, which was
Whoa.
already pretty huge.
Yeah.
And we might hit 60. I'm not sure,
Wow.
but it's somewhere. I think in the 50s somewhere probably is where
Wow.
we'll end up. I don't think everyone can quite make it. But
How is that for you, managing 50 students in a different country?
I
There
mean,
were-
yeah, go on, Georgia.
Well, I was just going to say there were a team of wranglers. We had, not that the TAs were, I don't know how much actual wrangling they had to do, but there were multiple people that were watching out for us and making sure we weren't deceased or lost or something.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that no one was deceased. I don't remember anyone being deceased. On
Me neither.
previous
I don't
trips,
recall
but-
either.
Me neither.
But we get Go Global is extremely, it's a good advert for Go
Yeah.
Global here, but they're extremely generous in the more students we have, the more they're able to help pay for graduate assistance.
Mm.
Technically, it's slightly different from a TA, but
Yeah.
all the same. We have a cohort of grads who come, and they're a huge amount of help. I would also say that the festival itself is run by an amazing team of extremely kind of caring folks. It's set up specifically to welcome people to kind of take part in film screenings, yes, but workshops and kind of educational seminars and these kinds of things as well. And so they're extremely kind of caring. Espinho itself is neither the biggest nor the most complexly sort of laid out town, and all of these things I do think factor in to help it actually pretty manageable in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, there's not too many places to get lost.
No, exactly.
I think
It's
Trouble wants.
Trouble
on
going to
your
do
lap.
what Trouble does throughout this. So just if you have a keyboard that she can walk on,
Oh,
She
please.
will?
she becomes a bit cat-like at that
Okay.
point.
Love that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
I used
that.
to have a cat named Chewbacca, I was saying, who was actually roughly the same size. He was gigantic and fat and really mean. But I loved him.
I don't think Trouble's.
No, sorry. Well, no, but I mean for a cat, I feel like if a cat was this size, that's
Yeah.
anyway,
Anyway.
that's neither here nor there.
Anyway.
It's film related.
It is film
Chewbacca.
How did the sort of like inception of the Go Global X Fest program happen?
Well, so the job that I had before coming to UBC was at a university in London, the University of Roehampton,
Yeah.
and 2012-ish, I think it was, some guy sort of turned up on the campus and asked. I think he just knocked on my office door. We'd probably arranged it in advance via email, but either way, effectively he just sort of like rolled up at Roehampton. It's like, hi, my name's Philippe. I used to study here, and now I run this film festival in Portugal. He didn't study film, but he studied at Roehampton. Would you be interested in like bringing some students along? And effectively I started taking smaller groups. I think I had like 15 maybe one year.
How many years ago was this?
2012-ish, so 20,
Okay.
yeah, 10 to 12 years ago, I'd guess. Maybe we went for the first time in 2013, maybe 2014, around then either way. And yeah, so I, not every year, but I took student groups for 5 or 6 years. That was all. There was no kind of like, it wasn't for credits. There was no course aligned with it. It was simply a kind of like a voluntary trip that those who could came on, and it went pretty well. And I got here and then found out about Go Global. It was like, I got an idea that might be able to help me get back to Europe, on UBC's dollar, from time to time. And so just kind of went from there. That's not why I did it. It's a great,
Just to be
it's a
clear.
great educational
Yeah.
opportunity.
I mean, within that too, like, because the course that's offered there's a cinema studies course, film production course that's offered in conjunction with this trip to the festival itself. But in the cinema studies version of the course, we're talking a lot about the history of film festivals. What kind of specific, maybe criteria would you look for in a festival that you want to attend versus a festival that you would maybe be less inclined to attend?
Can I get there? That's about it, really.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I mean, so actually one thing I've never really done, but I sometimes think I should do, is kind of literally go to somewhere to go to a festival. Like, oh, I might go to Berlin this year simply to go to the Berlin Film Festival. Maybe taking groups to Spienu is the only venue that I've done for that. have been at places where there's been a film festival going on, and I'll go. If I'm in Vancouver, I try to kind of go to like a screening of, as many of the festivals that take place as is possible.
Which are many.
There's
are many
loads.
festivals here, yeah.
There's tons.
All the time.
And so I really like going to and being part of festivals. But I say this because at some of the festivals that I've been to, you meet people, and I've met friends, and I'll also go for like I have a film screening, which is not hugely common, but does occasionally happen, and so that'll be another reason to go. But I have met people who are literally kind of like, they are globetrotting. I just went to Berlin, and now I'm off to Karlovy Vary, and then I go to London, and then I go to Dubai, and then I go to, and they're like a.
Well, if you have the means for it, I think it's such a great excuse to like visit somewhere.
Exactly.
Oh, there's a festival going on. I have a space where I'm going to meet people and like expand my network, and there's already kind of a structured activity to go to and attend as a reason for being somewhere.
I love a trip. I love a trip with an activity.
I love a structured activity.
I love a structured activity, yeah. But then I think it's really interesting too, even just with Fest and being in Portugal, and you and Mila both encouraged us to observe this, but like how the festival is impacting the town, and like how that is, an observable culture, and I don't know. It's all really interesting.
Yeah,
part of it. Moving a little bit on the topic of globetrotting. That was a terrible segue.
No, it's beautiful.
It's fine. Okay, great.
You do you, Georgia.
Yeah, you've obviously you're a well-traveled person. I'm gonna say this. Have you noticed differences in academic or filmmaking cultures amongst the places that you have lived and studied that influence your work? Or I guess more broadly, how does your physical location impact what you're studying or what you're creating?
It's a very good question. Yes, would be the short answer. I mean, only in the sense, not only, but to start with, at the very least, in the sense that all different places have different cultures. The soil is different, the water is different, and so different, even if it's technically the same species, it will still have a different taste or grow in to different sizes and these kinds of things. So I think that that pertains of human cultures as well, and if film is a kind of like an expression of the culture that it comes from, and I generally speaking believe that to be true, then clearly the films that are made in a particular place will have that flavor or color, or however we want to describe it, and actually those who teach based upon that experience or upon studying those objects will also kind of like have that. I mean, what the differences are in my experience, I mean, some are easier for me to comment on than others. So for example, teaching in the United Arab Emirates, certainly as far as film production is concerned, had so many vast similarities with teaching here, but there's definitely sensitivities that you need to have teaching in what is effectively an Islamic kind of culture primarily, even though the university that I was working at was extremely kind of multicultural, and actually had a really small minority of Emirati students at it, but all the same, that was a space where you need to be sensitive to things that you just can't necessarily do, like or hold hands. Like in one of my first classes, I asked my students, like, all right, let's get in a circle, hold hands, and then we're kind of like, nope, we don't do kind of like physical contact, and so you just kind of like working around that kind of thing, make silly mistakes on my part, and try and learn from it.
How long were you there for?
Not a huge amount of time, effectively 4 months teaching.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was like they have quite long semesters, so it was a long semester. But I was doing on the film production side of things, I was teaching like their final year students gearing up towards their final year project, because they shoot it mainly in the term after I'd left. But we were script stage and through to pre-production and development and stuff. I think in the UK, I don't know. I don't know if I could speak about the UK as a whole. I mean, I've worked in different places within the UK, and there are also different cultures there. But certainly, having moved to Vancouver from London, there is Vancouver's a very multicultural space in a certain way,
Yeah.
and London is a very multicultural space in a different kind of way. So I guess to put my finger on it, I think it's a greater diversity of skin pigmentation in London. Not that Vancouver's without it, but London just, I think, it's a bigger space.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
think it's so funny. Me moving to Vancouver from Sydney, I was like, whoa, so multicultural. But that's just my background coming from Sydney, Australia. Yeah.
Well,
it's-
also
no, it's not.
Japan.
And Japan as well. Yeah.
Yeah, different.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, my original question, I think, is a little motivated too by, I still say when people ask when I tell them that I am in film studies and then they ask what that is, I inevitably end up talking about your Canadian cinema class because it is genuinely one of my favorite classes that I've taken while at UBC. But I imagine that class was not something that you had been plotting, or the curriculum you hadn't been creating while you were living elsewhere. Like that was something, or maybe I'm completely wrong.
No,
but
I had not. I mean, I'd probably included The Sweet Hereafter and a couple of other Canadian films on various courses over the course of my career up until that point. But that was the first time I was doing anything focused specifically on Canadian cinema. Let me think. I maybe had begun to be, I'd certainly encountered Indigenous Canadian film, because I think the point to get to is effectively, I kind of decided to forego teaching and have, in the years that I've taught that course, completely foregone teaching classic Canadian, white settler Canadian films, Atom Goyan, David Cronenberg, and all that kind of stuff. Brilliant as it is.
love Cronenberg.
Yeah, for sure. But actually focus on Indigenous filmmaking. And I mean, I that's been the most brilliant learning experience for me. I hope I do it respectfully and well. It's not just, I mean, actually very important to me is that we're also reading almost exclusively, work by First Nations and more generally Indigenous scholars. Maybe not always from Canada specifically, but from Turtle Island and other places, New Zealand, Aotearoa, Australia, and so on as well. So, I don't know how I'm answering the question anymore, but
No,
good. I mean, for me, that's just been an amazing experience, and having the various speakers that I've managed to get in, the generosity of filmmakers who've kind of given up their time and come in, some embarrassingly for kind of like very little as far as honoraria are concerned. If not nothing on one occasion, I'm feeling very guilty as I recall. The long and short of it is, I really, do my best, and I'm sure I fail in many ways, but do my best to kind of really embed that into a kind of like in relation to your first question, a kind of like a local culture of kind of like film production, thinking about film, and thinking, philosophy more generally, if you will, world outlook, and to use that as an opportunity to kind of learn and to kind of, I suppose, turn that whole course in some ways into something like a land acknowledgement, and to kind of just spend weeks living with these texts, written and audiovisual, to try to understand this place better. And that's by no means a journey that is anywhere near its end. It's only just beginning, but it's, for me, that's maybe the most rewarding experience I have kind of teaching here.
Yeah.
I mean, I like all of my courses, but that one, makes me feel conscientious of the space that I'm in, if that makes sense.
I know all of your students appreciate that. Well, all of the students that I've spoken to appreciate that perspective, or that lens that we learn from you through as well. Because I think UBC does a great job at, the professors at UBC do a great job of talking about certain things and trying to have less of a colonial perspective on what they're teaching. But I definitely feel the difference in your classes. On a similar note, I'm curious to know what came first for you. Was it the filmmaking or was it the academic? Was it your academia, and which, like, how does each affect each other?
I mean, it depends on where we think academia begins, but
When you began learning how to read
Yeah.
as a child.
Did you pick up a camera or a book first?
Yeah, sorry.
well, so I mean, I made films from pretty early on with, you know, like an old high 8 camcorder, and I was actually quite sort of, I mean, I think my films, some people, I mean, I'm always told by my partner Mila not to, you know, be so British in terms of self-deprecation and so on. But you know, if my films are, you know, very artistic, I'm not saying that they're high art, but no, I've just got to say it the way I would normally say it. I mean, effectively, if, you know, if some people might find my films quite, I don't know, pretentious or something, avant-garde. Yeah, that's the term. You know, it's like, I have to be myself, but I sort of, it was always kind of like there from the beginning. So effectively, I remember being, this is quite young. It's not like super young, but this is pre-mobile phone ages, just to sort of to date myself. But you know, I wanted to do an adaptation of a short story by a French author called Guy de Maupassant called Two Friends, which is about two guys who kind of like escape or leave whatever town they're in, which is under siege during the Franco-Prussian War in 1871, and they go fishing, and they're out for too long because they love fishing so much that they miss the curfew and the password's changed, and so they end up being shot. So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to get my 14-year-old self and my 14-year-old friends to play grown-ups in a film.
That's
basically
so fun.
no one was interested. No one wanted to do this whatsoever.
That's how it works.
At all. Yeah. So, but I did end up making a film where we had kind of like lots of fight scenes. And because my friends were happy to do fight scenes, but they didn't want to lose the fights, basically my kind of like kid movies are movies of me getting beaten up by my friends.
That's hilarious.
In inverted commas.
Do they exist on YouTube or somewhere?
I wish.
Are those
I wish.
findable?
And I made a video essay that is sort of about this and cats and cats in movies and other stuff, which is kind of published. And for that, I was really hoping somehow to retrieve this footage, but the house that I grew up in was flooded in 2008, and all of that material was on the ground floor of that house, and it all got destroyed. So,
wow.
Yeah, we lost that archive.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed. I deleted all of my movies that I made when I was a kid, because at 12 years old, I was like, I need more storage. Let me just delete everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, you're discovering that I'm extremely long-winded. Well, you've been in my classes, you know that I'm long-winded, but
this is what a podcast is for.
We're here to talk.
That's right.
We're here to
That's
listen.
Right. But so I think filmmaking was there like all along, but so also, you know, my parents quite religiously recorded movies onto VHS tapes, and you know, even from I don't know when, my sister's a couple of years older than me, but we would get up at 5:30 in the morning, go down and watch one of a number of, you know, about 30. There was probably like a canon of about 30 films that we used to watch loads of, mainly like James Bond films or Some Like It Hot. But they also had hundreds of movies, and so I was watching those. I was doing pretty well at school. You know, I'm a completely unimaginative human being. You're supposed to go, and certainly kind of like, you know, white middle class bourgeois, you know, British kind of person. It's like, oh, yeah, you're supposed to go to university, right? Go there. I had no idea you could study film. Certainly wasn't offered at when I was at school, and so I just kind of carried on doing languages, which was what I kind of ended up being good at, or good enough at, I guess. And so I didn't realize that you could study film until quite late on, after 21, 22, I think, probably. I mean, I by that time I knew that you could, but it was too late for me to kind of like do it. But I was already by that point in time definitely kind of writing scripts and trying to write actually at that point more than kind of make personally myself. So in a lot of ways they kind of gone hand in hand. I don't think I would have done a PhD if I hadn't really thought that it was also time for me to dedicate to screenwriting and as well, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
artistic passion.
I know.
It just runs.
Yeah.
Just
I think
continues
school is
through.
also like, you said you didn't study it when you were kind of in your degree, but pursuing it further, it just gives you space to explore and kind of what I really appreciate about my creative writing classes and all of my classes is it kind of forces me to be creative. It gives me a container with which to be creative in. Yeah.
Some random knowledge from my organizational behavior class. We were talking about fostering creativity. And
Oh yes.
how to maintain innovative cultures. But one of the thoughts was you need to, just repeated in the literature a lot of times, is a balance between like rigid structure and unparalleled freedom, and the fact that you need structure to be creative within in order to consistently be creative. Or so says the books from the David Lamb Library in Sauter.
Lovely.
I believe. I mean, for years I used to teach film production, kind of based on. Do you know this film, The Five Obstructions, by Lars von Trier and
I
Jörn
should.
Lett?
I think I've heard the name. I definitely haven't seen it.
So basically, Lars von Trier says to this guy, Jörn Lett, who made this film in the 60s, a short film called The Perfect Human, and it's like one of Lars von Trier's favorite films. And so he says, "Oh, Jörn, you got to remake The Five Obstructions like a bunch of different times, actually 5 times. But each time you do it, I'm going to give you a different set of constraints." And so he basically says, like, you can't make the film with any shot that's longer than 12 frames and all this kind of stuff. So it has to have this kind of like super rapid editing style. So he's basically kind of wants him to kind of destroy his own film in some ways, as a kind of therapy, I think is what he believes he's doing. But the point kind of is that actually these constraints kind of end up unleashing Jörn Lett's creativity. There's a French novelist called Georges Perec who is famous for a couple of great pieces of work. One's called Life a User's Manual, but maybe the most famous one is called, in French, La Disparition, which gets translated into English as A Void, but it's a novel that doesn't feature the letter E.
I've heard of this one.
I talk about it in some classes, I can't remember, but either way, like, Perec, there's 4 E's in Georges and Perec, 2 in each word, and it's the most common letter in the French alphabet. And it's a kind of crazy challenge to set for yourself. But he sort of says, well, in the same way that after gouging out his own eyes, Oedipus kind of finally learns to see, that, maybe if creatively you kind of set yourself these kind of similar constraints, that's how you sort of truly unleash your creativity.
Yeah.
That's a visceral and poetic image.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on that in our episode with Ethan as well, talking about even like extreme low budget filmmaking, like those restrictions kind of leave room for other forms of creativity that maybe otherwise you wouldn't be able to explore with the $20 million budget.
Can be liberating in some ways.
Yeah. Should we take a quick break?
We'll take a quick break and come right back to continue talking with Will Brown. I'm Georgia.
And I'm Hannah.
And you're listening to Film Picnic. We are here with UBC prof and film scholar Will Brown. Thanks for being here with us.
Dr. Will Brown.
Pleasure. Very good to be
here. Over the break we were chatting a little bit about documentary things.
Yes.
On that thought, and we can edit this, but I'm going to say this anyways. On Hannah's thesis film set, I got to be the BTS photographer / videographer, and I
loved it. You did a great job.
Thank you. I'm not very experienced in handling cameras, but it was
videos
so
make me want to cry.
It made me. I don't know if this sounds pretentious, but I was like, this makes me want to be a documentarian. This makes me want to be a documentary filmmaker.
That's awesome.
It was just like I just got to like hide in the stairwell while everyone moved around me and find the smiles on people's faces and try to capture them or find the moments.
Making weird noises as
Hannah
I'm
learned
thinking.
A lot about herself.
I did. I did not know I was being perceived, and I'm there like.
Yeah, but I don't know. But then there were moments where I was like, "Is this?
No,
is it? there were points where I was just like, ooh, I feel spooky. Like I'm watching people and I'm observing this personal moment that someone's having and they don't know that I'm observing them. And yet they do because they come onto the set knowing that there's a BTS person. But I'm like,
They sign a waiver.
I was
They sign
grappling
away
with
their
that.
face.
That's right. That's right.
A great way to think about it. Hit us with a question, Hannah.
Okay. Well.
Hit Will with a question.
Okay.
Was it? Yeah. Okay. I was just gonna say you should do more. I mean,
Yeah, you
clearly
should do
of
more.
this stuff.
We
and-
will do more. You should do more.
We'll do something.
I heard through the grapevine that you were involved in the application process for film production students. Is that true?
It is.
Can I ask you some questions regarding that?
Yes.
There's a laser.
There's a laser.
staring in.
Well, I just feel like I've gotten lots. Okay, a little fun fact about me is that when I was in high school, I used to make YouTube videos, and I made a lot of videos about applying to UBC and coming here. And I've had a lot of questions about what are professors looking for, what applications what makes an application stand out. And I've always kind of had the assumption that it's like, yeah, you're a well-rounded human being that has different interests, but I'm so curious to know what does the department look out for in an application? Like what are the kind of either most important parts, or what are some things that might make an application stand out?
What specific tastes should people cater to
So-
win your favor?
I mean, it would be impossible because there's, this year I can't remember the exact number, but it's about 350 applications, and this year was a slightly smaller pool
Yeah.
than previous years, going for not that huge number of spaces. So the number of folks who are selected is ultimately kind of very small compared to the number who are applying.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone can look at every single application. Maybe one person kind of has a go through, and it's a different person each year. So, and everyone's different to some degree. Point being, maybe, but everyone is looked at twice, like at least twice, by kind of professors at the university, and of those that you looked at, that I look at, 150 or whatever it was, like out of 350, I basically am giving them a score.
Yeah.
It's splitting hairs so often. Like there's honestly, there's so many incredible applications. It's impossible to differentiate them truly.
Yeah.
You have to go on kind of like tiny little things often, and it's awful. I think my consolation to myself to some degree is coming to UBC is not what will make or break a filmmaker.
No.
With all due respect, and anyone who, for whatever reason, wanted to but wasn't able to come, should still be going out there and making films. And, maybe they'll be kind of like, F you, UBC, but hopefully not even that, because there's no point. Like, you're great. And, I never went to film school. I've totally been rejected from film school.
Yeah.
UBC is not technically a film school. It's a university, and there is a distinction. But all the same, I wouldn't want to sweat it. I mean, but what I'm looking out for, honestly, the main thing, the thing that for me carries the most amount of weight is the self-portrait that everyone is supposed to do. Short films to some degree, and statements and transcripts and written pieces of work to some degree. But actually, I find that it's really in the personal kind of like portrait that the real kind of like difference is made. Because so this is like top tip if you ever apply to UBC and you're asked to do this.
Look to camera.
You could look to camera. Yeah. Oh, I see me look to camera.
Sorry, no, that was me.
Very
That was
slow,
me
very
emphasizing
slow.
what you were
Yeah,
saying. Potential people watching this that are going to apply to UBC. I'm so sorry.
If you film yourself talking for, I think you got like 2 minutes, or you shoot for 10 minutes, and I think they change it because there's a lot of material to get through. But don't just do you talking to a camera. This is a film, right? You can insert things, you can add stuff, you can manipulate the image, like you can play with it to show that you're thinking about form beyond simply a kind of like a 2-minute selfie, basically, of me talking. And so I think for a start, like think about the form, because even if it's just the, in inverted commas, just the self-portrait, It's actually when you go that extra mile for that, because it is also a film of some sorts, that kind of feels like, yeah, this is someone who's kind of like really invested in this. As far as their kind of like short films are concerned, of course, I mean, there's amazing short films. There's short films made with absolutely no resources. There's clearly some people who have incredible access to resources in some of the short films, and you're trying to kind of democratize that playing field. And for me, it's the self-portrait that really, really allows that to kind of happen. And beyond that, I think honestly, you've got to like be honest. I think you've got to be yourself. I think you have to, and this is something that kind of can't be learnt, but in all honesty, I think what I look for is just a kind of a spark of difference. And when I say it can't be learnt, that doesn't mean that I don't think everyone has it, but I think it's extremely hard to kind of like share with other people your difference, as it were. I think a lot of people, I mean, this is how I teach film production sort of as a whole, is a lot of people, there's nothing wrong with copying kind of like what exists. Clearly we take influence from it, and clearly there's scope for careers among filmmakers, you know, who might effectively make, dare I say it, quite workaday episodes of quite workaday shows, and someone is well paid, and you get to eat in nice restaurants and whatever it is that you're kind of endeavoring to achieve by doing that.
Right.
But, you know, it's also an artistic medium, and I think as an artist, you kind of want to express yourself, and effectively, therefore, you have to make films that no one else in the world could make. Because otherwise you're not expressing yourself, you're not showing how you're different from anyone else, you're kind of just making stuff that anyone could make, and there's absolutely no point making stuff that anyone can make. But it's an easy kind of confusion to have, and it's an easy kind of like knee-jerk recourse to follow in the face of kind of like a moment of a lack of inspiration. But that's where you need to stop and take some time to be kind of like, what can I do that only I could do? So I say be formally adventurous, you know. Don't just kind of like do a selfie, but also kind of like think about kind of like what is it that I'm capable of expressing that no one else is. And everyone does have that. I mean, everyone is different, but you have to be brave. Effectively, you've kind of got to show a little bit of kind of like how weird you are. You've got to reveal a little bit the one thing probably that you're most afraid of revealing, precisely because it's the thing that makes you different, and because it makes you different, it's quite possibly the thing that, you know, other people will judge you about, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of so difficult. But for me, it's kind of like, if I can see someone who's at least kind of like working towards that, I'm going, I want to work effectively. I'm also looking at it kind of like, do I, even if I'm not personally kind of like working with this person myself constantly for 3-4 years, do I want to be in a classroom, potentially in a classroom with this person for 3-4 years, and for them to be kind of like pushing themselves, keen to learn, you know, interested in honing their craft from a technical perspective, but also from like what I would call like an ethical perspective, as in, you know, learning about themselves, the world, what they can do, how they can be, the person that they can be in the world, and how they could reflect that in film.
I love that. I think that's wonderful.
What was the weirdness that you exposed?
You looked at me. Georgia thinks I'm weird, and I think she's right. But
you think I'm weird.
Yeah,
You're
true.
weird. That's why we're great friends.
Exactly. What is the weirdness? Actually just rewatched my self-portrait video the other day, and I think I talked a lot about growing up in many different places and being a part of many different cultures, and I'd really just talked about my family, why I wanted to make films. I think I talked about, I mean, I had like 1 minute or something. My dogs were in it. I think they like left me at one point, and I made a weird face. And I really just kind of told my whole story in a very short minute, and it kind of, I think, like why I wanted to make films. I also like why I wanted to do it here in Canada when I lived in Australia. I was talking about how I wanted to extend my home to Canada as well.
That's beautiful.
I mean, I love it. I will. I mean, I might say, sort of thinking about, you know, folks who could listen to this and think, I want to play, let's do film. You know, I would not have gotten into a film production program based upon the criteria that I myself am kind of like putting out there. At kind of like age 18, I think I was, extremely boring, unimaginative, kind of like insular and so on. I mean, maybe if I'd have had the courage to be kind of like, check out these films I've made where I'm getting beaten up by my friends, maybe. But I kind of also kind of suspect I would have been trying to please someone rather than telling like something about myself. So I would have been trying to kind of reach for a formula that is not my own. And I wouldn't say I've finished this journey by any stretch. It takes years, I think, for some people to effectively kind of like, in inverted commas, mature into sort of artistry, including in film, but perhaps in any medium. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think we have a world that's structured in trying to kind of like beat that out of you. And if you don't get going down that path sooner rather than later, it will be beaten out of you. But I would also hold that actually, I'm sure quite possibly, quite probably, maybe inevitably, some of the most extraordinary artists are the ones who hold on to that through 40 plus years, 50 years, who knows, of kind of life experience. And then finally, because they've just been working at it, they get something like a kind of like a break. Because you truly need life experience. And this is absolutely what I lacked at kind of like age 18. Like, life experience is the thing that will make you a better filmmaker than any kind of like technical thing or any even knowledge of cinema itself. Those are helpful things, but unless you kind of like know yourself, the world, people, the human, maybe animals, I think you're only at the beginning of your journey. And so just, again, kind of don't give up. I mean, I think you have to just keep going with that. And, because you do have stories to tell, but it just may take a long time to get there. And so be patient on yourself, even in a world that's kind of like very impatient with us, and perhaps especially impatient with young people. I mean, I guess don't give up. I mean, that's repeating myself now.
That's good advice.
Yeah, 100%. Especially the life experience portion of it, I think. I think we all feel the rush to be earning a certain amount or be finished our degree or be in our dream job by 25, 22. And that's just insane.
I will say, I mean, not film specifically, but I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy. And I think stand-up comedy is so much better when someone has interesting stories to tell. And that comes from life experience and those kinds of things.
So true.
I was also just thinking, I never applied to the film production program because, as I've said many times, I'm cinema studies, as it's now called. But
it's no longer film. It's now cine.
It's now cine. But I was like, what would I do if I was to apply? And I was just...
Would you apply for film? Would you study film production after having done a degree in cinema studies?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. If I had $1 billion to spend and be in school forever, maybe I would.
I think if you had $1 billion, you might as well just spend it on your film.
Yeah.
Rather than on studying in order to make your film.
What if
I think you got it.
What if I just really want to go to the film production building every day and that's my life's goal?
Yeah.
You got it. You could buy the film production.
With $1 billion, I think you could.
Well, I was gonna say, like, again, talking about this documentary class, I remember we were studying actualities and we were watching Andy Warhol screen tests of people staring at the camera for 2 minutes and not saying anything and trying not to blink. And I was like, has anyone, maybe this is a random question, has anyone ever submitted a video where they don't say anything or something where you're like, what is this? Why is this? Too experimental, perhaps.
Too avant-garde.
There could not be such a thing. I mean, I could easily, no, maybe they have, but none stands out in my memory. I kind of maybe will get 20 Andy Warhol, eating a hamburger sequences or screen tests or equivalent coming up, but in next year because of your wonderful kind of work. But I actually think that would be really cool. I mean, I don't know how I would distinguish between one screen test and another without having seen them anyway.
I should have just submitted and not talked about this.
But I think it would be cool. Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting approach to it. I mean, it shows you're definitely thinking differently. You're doing something. You're taking a risk. You're exposing something. Like you're potentially kind of like making an idiot of yourself and something, because some people might hear that, and I mean, hopefully no one, but some people might hear that and be kind of like, you did what? Oh, you're never going to get in with that. But actually, it's precisely that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just like high school movies, basically. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
A risk taking.
I wish we had more time.
Before we leave, we like
What's in the
to
basket?
do a little segment called "What's in the Basket," where you
What?
get to open the picnic basket.
What?
Please, what could possibly be in there? We don't know.
Trouble, this is
Trouble
not
says
something that you can
not
eat,
for
but
you,
we should
Trouble,
have gotten
actually.
Trouble something.
amazing.
It's just-
Trouble, you cannot have this.
No,
But it is
absolutely
some
not.
chocolat noir.
For your
There we
next
go.
movie going, whatever.
Thank
if you're
you.
watching a movie this evening with the graduate students, perhaps. Or not.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
Dark
yeah,
chocolate.
That's true.
Um,
Thank you so much. I'm going to pop that there just
Yes,
because
that's
Yeah.
okay.
she's
That's
going to
You don't have to eat it right now.
get it out. That's right. Sit here.
Yeah.
So you've seen Warhol's kind of like, you've seen the audition tapes, but he has this one where it's just eating a hamburger. It's like 6 minutes. It's just kind of like the awkwardness of eating a hamburger. You could just do this kind of like experimental segues. Just kind of like every
Should we-
guest has to just eat a whole bar of chocolate.
Wait, that's hilarious.
Would that
we use the
be-
fish lens and have them really close up? Yeah.
Honestly,
yeah,
it's
write
hard
that down,
enough-
Ethan.
It's hard enough to get our guests to like. Sometimes we're like, make a TikTok with us. Yeah, and
Doesn't
that's
work very well.
sometimes difficult. Anyways, but-
What other questions did you have, just to know?
you're like filmmaking, low budget filmmaking.
we do prepare lots of questions that we know we're not going to get to.
Yeah, I mean, academic institutions, creative burnout in bureaucratic systems. Truly, there's
Might have to have a part.
there's quite a lot. Part 2?
Oh, I don't
Question mark?
I don't think you need a part 2, but these are great. I mean, as in, I'm sure your listeners
Yeah.
can.
I'm not coming back on this show.
They got better people to listen to than me, but these are, I mean, such great questions.
No, thank you
So many important things to touch
Thank
upon.
you for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today.
Thank you for taking the time. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Thank
We're so
you.
happy to finally have you. This is
Yes.
this is our final assignment.
Directed studies. We talked about it before. I don't know why I keep pointing to the camera. I think that's
No, it's
that's my
good.
new
No, interact.
Maybe
with
I
people.
am
I'm looking at Ethan. 'cause
Jim
Well,
from the
Ethan
office.
is kind of the
Ethan's doing his
camera.
own.
Yeah.
He's got a final
Maybe.
assignment.
Yeah.
to come in.
Yeah.
Join us next time on Film Picnic. Well, before you
rewind.
join us next time, you
Thank-
can Hannah, please.
Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your Friday, or if you're not listening on a Friday, the rest of your day. You can find us at FLM Picnic on Instagram or TikTok or any other socials that we do have.
YouTube.
Yep.
Now?
Also at Film Picnic. Well, FLM,
FLM
but you can
Picnic.
just find us at Film Picnic. You can also find us at CITR Radio at Film Picnic.
Yeah. We will see you next time as we continue debunking the film industry with meaningful conversation, one picnic at a time.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.